Hey guys, Zen here, and today I'm going to be sharing with you the top 8 meta decks in Pokemon Pocket's Mythical Islands expansion. Now, today's deck lists are going to be brought to you by the Limitless TCG tournament data, and how we're going to be looking at it are based on a few factors. Pretty much how many times players have entered a tournament with said deck and what the win rate of that deck is. We're going to be going from least win rate to the highest win rate for the top 8, but there is something we should consider here. For example, the deck list that I played and won with Celebi Serperior, a lot of other people entered and also could not win, right? So that win rate percentage is going to be pretty low. I believe with a little over 900 players playing a version of Celebi Serperior. And with that, we have a 47.63% win rate. Now, it doesn't mean Celebi is like the worst of the worst. There are definitely other deck lists that you can take into tournaments that aren't doing nearly as well. But with that being said, out of the top 8, it is performing, I'd say, the worst. Even though I piloted it to a victory, unfortunately, it's not doing as well as the other 7. With that, let me share with you the deck list, and I can actually explain it because I played it. But we have 2 Snivies, 2 Servines, 2 Serperior, 2 Celebi EXs, because you know what that does. That thing, the reason I think Celebi EX has so much potential is because it could scale infinitely, right? There's a little bit of variance and luck involved with coin flips, but that's the entire game, let's be honest. We have a single execute and then 2 executors. This is where I need to explain things to a couple people. The executor from the Mythical Island, I was going to say Alolan here, is mainly here to counter mirror matches, Celebi EXs, even other cards like that ramp a ton of energy, Mewtwo EXs, pretty much anything that requires a lot of energy, golems. This thing can come in and kind of just shred them, right? Executor EX, however, is here to help us get an aggressive early start, because if we can get at least 1 point onto the board, we can literally just have our Celebi EX in the back, ramp it up by the time we evolve into Serperior, and then that thing comes out, flips like 8 to 10 coins. It's very hard to lose at that point. So that was my strategy. I piloted it, took it all the way to first place, and it was a lot of fun. We have 2 Ericas to keep our grass types alive, 2 Professor Researchers, 1 Sabrina, 2 Pokeballs, and 2 X Speeds. But that is the first deck in today's video, and we still got 7 more, guys. So if you're excited, don't forget to hit the like button, consider subscribing, and let's hop into 7th place. And that's going to be the Golem Drudgegon deck list, piloted by Nino Leo here. This is the first place deck list. However, there are about a little over 300 players that have entered with a variation of this deck list. However, when we're looking at how many wins this deck gets, it looks like it's going to be around 47.76. Now, again, this is, what day is it? The 29th of December. So these numbers might change, but I think the top 8 in today's video are going to stay the same because they've been around for about 2 weeks now. I don't think we're going to get any crazy variations going up or down. The top 8 is going to be the top 8. We might see one brand new deck emerge and kick out something like Celebi, but until that happens, it doesn't matter what place they're in. All top 8 is pretty strong until we start getting up to top 3. Anyway, with that, let me get right back into this deck list by Nino Leo. It's the 2 Geodudes, the 2 Gravelers, and the 2 Golems. Now, real quick, we're going to want to talk about the Gravelers and the Golems that are from the Mythical Island expansion, because now you can attack on curve with your Graveler, and if you have Brock in your hand, you could also attack on curve with Golem if you're going second, dealing 120 to your opponent, and then also protecting yourself from 30 damage. Drudgegon is here. This is quite literally the best Pokemon card from Mythical Island, being the best frontliner in the entire game because of that rough skin ability that forces your opponent to take 20 damage every time they attack Drudgegon. But wait, there's more. The spiciest part of this deck is once they knock out that Drudgegon, guess what? Your Marshadow right here can come right back in and revenge kill them with 100 damage. Or we have the Hitmonlee here countering potentially the best meta deck currently in the game based on win rate percentage and how many players are actually finding success with that game. We'll talk about that a bit later. We have 2 Bronx, 2 Leafs, 2 Professor Researchers, a Giovanni, 2 Pokeballs, and a Potion. By the way, guys, if you want to see any of these decks in action, I took most, if not all of them, on a little joyride, if you will, on my channel. This channel covers so many different variations of deck lists that if you haven't seen any of them before, do yourselves a favor, check it out, consider subscribing. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. With that, let's move on to the 6th place place, and that's going to be Scolipede and Wheezing, with over 650 players bringing this in, and the win rate percentage being around 47.88%. So again, the last three decks, they're all 47. I guess you could tie them around the same, but the little point number after it reflects that Scolipede Wheezing here does a little bit better than the other two. And I really like this mainly because there is no EX Pokemon, you guys. You want to win a tournament with 0 EX Pokemon, you take a Scolipede Wheezing deck list right here. And this was piloted by a Die Cavallo, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Shout out to you. And it's 2 Venipedes and 2 Whirlipedes. Now the Whirlipede's great because it poisons the opponent's active Pokemon, which then you could evolve into your Scolipede, and that Venoshock deals 70 plus 50 damage. So if on curve, you'll be doing the 20 and 20 from Whirlipede and Venipede, that's 40 plus the poison. We're not going to add the poison damage just yet, plus the 120. So you're looking at 160 up to 170 up to 180 with the poison ticks. Scolipede right there destroys any threat in the game, which is very slept on. We have the genetic Apex Coughing and the genetic Apex Wheezing to help lend to that whole poison toxic synergy. So that way Scolipede can just come in, you can bounce your Wheezing with Koga, send it right back to your hand, do it all over again. Scolipede comes in for free, almost one-shots every Pokemon in the game. And if that's not your cup of tea, guess what? Scolipede only needs 2 energy, Wheezing only needs 1 energy, and then your Tauros there needs 3 energy. So you can build up your single Tauros on the bench and then potentially have that come in and just shred a EX Pokemon, dealing up to 120 damage. Honestly, such a fun deck list. One of my personal favorites, and I'm so happy we're starting to see this thing do so well. In fact, making it into the top 8 deck list in today's video. We have 2 Leafs, 2 Professor Researchers, 1 Sabrina, and 2 Pokeballs. Now we're going to check out the most played deck list variation, and that's going to be Mewtwo and Gardevoir, with over 2,100 players partaking in tournaments with a variation of this deck list. And this is only counting Mythical Island, so within the last 2.5 weeks, so to speak. Now, you could argue that this is the best deck in the meta, even though the win rate percentage for this is 49.41. But because so many people are playing this deck, I mean, that number's not going to be crazy high, because just because you play a really strong deck doesn't mean you know how to pilot it. So unfortunately, some players and pilots are going to bring a win rate down. So again, that's why I said any of these decks in the top 8 are going to be the top 8 best in the meta currently. So take it however you want it. Anyway, we're going to talk about Pimo here and their first place deck list, which is a 2 Ralts, 2 Curlias, 2 Gardevoir, which you know what they do. If you don't already, let me recap you. Gardevoir gets online, and you could essentially ramp any of your Psychic Pokemon to perfection. Specifically that Mewtwo EX, which shreds everything. You have 2 Mewtwo EXs and 1 Jinx. A lot of people don't know how to play Jinx here. Jinx is not to lead. Jinx is late game wins right here. Because if your Mewtwo goes down against something, more than likely it's something that has a ton of energy ramped onto them. So that way your Jinx can come in and get a revenge kill with that Psychic, especially if you have Gardevoir already online on your bench. So that's how you want to play Jinx. If you can, you don't want to lead Jinx into the active slot. Always kind of keep Jinx on your bench, unless, you know, it's something with your Ralts or something like you really have to decide. But typically it's your Ralts, your Jinx on bench, your Mewtwo, you start ramping, and all these other cards in this deck make it way more consistent. That's why it's such a good deck. You have 2 Professor Researchers, which draw you 2 cards, a Sabrina for disruption, a Leaf to help pull back that Mewtwo, a Giovanni, 2 Pokeballs, again, to find your basic Pokemon, and then the brand new Mythical Slab that takes Psychic decks and make them way more consistent by helping you pull your Psychic Pokemon. So if you're still waiting on that Curlier or Gardevoir, that Mythical Slab is there to help you. And if it's not a Psychic Pokemon, guess what? It goes on the bottom of your deck, which means you're getting that much closer to the cards that you actually need. We have a single X speed and a single red card. And I think red card is probably going to be greatly seen across many Mewtwo EX deck lists. I think they're probably going to be the only deck list that really takes advantage of red card. I don't think red card's the greatest card. Sometimes it hurts you and helps your opponent, but I think for Mewtwo EX players, it's probably where they shine the best, to be honest. Now let's move on to the fourth place meta deck list, and this one surprised me. This one's by Bailey D, and we've had how many of around 300 players go into tournaments with this variation of a deck list. It's not the Arcazard, it's not the Arcanine Charizard Moltres deck list. In fact, they just drop Charizard entirely, and guess what? We added a Mew EX, and it makes so much sense, you guys. I haven't played this yet, so expect sometime this week a video on the channel where I'm actually like playing this deck list because it's super spicy. I'm kind of a huge fan of it. So you have your 2 Growlithe, your 2 Arcanine EXs, your 2 Moltresses, and your single Mew EX. Now the idea is to lead with your Moltres EX, give it an energy, and then start ramping your Arcanine EX with Inferno Dance. Makes sense. And now every other turn, any fire energy from your energy zone is given to your Mew EX. So now you're dual ramping 2 Pokemon on your bench with your Moltres as like the frontliner. And then when you're able to, you can use your Leaf, you can use your 2 X speeds to pull back that Moltres, and now you have 2 options. You have a Arcanine EX that can deal up to 120 damage, or you can bring out that Mew EX that literally sends back the opponent's active Pokemon's attack right back to their face. So if it's a Mewtwo, it one-shots Mewtwo a turn before they can get online. It's pretty awesome, you guys. This deck is really spicy. And to see it doing this well with a win rate percentage of 51.32, shout out to you guys. Shout out to everyone who piloted this deck. We have 2 Professor Researchers, a single Budding to help pull back your Mew. It's literally Kogo for your Mew. You have a Giovanni, a Sabrina, another red card. Literally just got done saying Mewtwo Gardevoir is probably going to be the only deck I'll see red cards, and here we go. We see another red card. 2 Pokeballs, 2 Potions, and 2 XPs like we already said. Definitely a brand new spicy deck. Happy to see it. Excited to see it stay and continue to climb. But also probably the main reason why Celebi and Serperior aren't doing that well. Now we're in the top 3, and the next 2 are kind of the same but a little bit different. First up is Duo here with a Pikachu Zebstrika deck list variation. You're going to have your 2 Zebstrikas that can just attack something on the bench. This is really good to counter those Gyarados, Magikarp deck lists, or anything else that's trying to build on their bench. You could just snipe them from the active spot. You have your 2 Pikachu EXs, your 2 Zapdos. Every other Pokemon here is weak to fighting except Zapdos, so that's a really nice addition. And then your single Dedenne. I love this thing. I get so many coin flip heads and paralyze my opponents with Dedenne more than anything else. Misty can't even compete with the amount of heads Dedenne here gives. We have 2 Sabrinas, 2 Professor Researchers, 1 Giovanni, 1 Blue, 1 Leaf, 2 Pokeballs, and 2 X Speeds. Definitely a staple Pikachu EX deck list. Top 3 in today's listings. The only new additions are going to be your Leaf, your Blue, and your Dedenne, and it's pretty solid. But now let's move into the top 2. It is another Pikachu EX variant. However, this one utilizes Raichu and a couple other new Pokemon. Now this has a win rate percentage of 54.26%. And I forgot to mention this, but the Pikachu deck list before us is also 54.09. So they're both around 54% win rates, with the Pikachu Zebstrika being over 650 players bringing a deck list variant of it, and this one being a little bit more newer, around 450. We have the 2 brand new Pikachus, the 2 Raichus, the 2 Pikachu EXs, the 2 Electabuzz, the single Dedenne, the 2 Lieutenant Surges, the Professor Research, the 2 Sabrinas, the 1 Geo, the 2 Pokeballs, and the 2 X Speeds. Now the idea of this is to get your Pikachu EX online and just shred everything. But what if you can't do that? What if you spent 2 energy onto your Pikachu EX, and now it's going to go down the next turn? Well, you can X speed away, bring out either your Electabuzz or your Raichu and Lieutenant Surge them, and just send all that energy right to that Pokemon and essentially kind of shred any Pokemon in the game. Mainly with the Raichu dealing the 140 damage. Now the issue with this is you will lose all your energy doing that route. However, the new Electabuzz is also kind of spicy, being able to deal 40 damage to any Pokemon on your opponent's side, being their active or their benched Pokemon. So that's why I think Electabuzz is kind of pretty good, to be honest. But that's the second place listing. Now we got to go to the first, and you guys already know what it is. We're going to be looking at Vincent's deck list for Gyarados and Greninja. Now this is going to blow your guys' mind. Over 1,000 players have played a variation of this deck list, and 56% win rate, which is the highest in today's video. Now, does it mean it's the best deck in the meta? I don't know. I mean, that win rate's pretty good and there are a lot of people piloting it. What I do know is this deck list is a advanced but also somewhat beginner friendly deck list where it looks like a ton of people can build a variation of this deck and still do really, really well. So with that, let's look at this deck list, and we have the 2 brand new Magikarps and the 2 brand new Gyarados, which honestly, it's the 140 damage and the 180 HP that makes it so strong. Having an HP tied with Charizard EX, but also being able to deal so much damage and potentially de-ramp Pokemon on your opponent's side of the board is really good. But it's the other cards in this deck that make it so strong. We have the Greninja that can sit on your bench and just snipe things for 20. We have your Druddigon that can frontline for you until you build up that Gyarados, and now in a perfect world you have a Gyarados in your active spot and a Greninja or even 2 in the back. Let's pretend you have 1 Greninja, well, you're dealing up to 160 a turn with that Greninja, and if you have 2 Greninjas in your backline, you're dealing up to a 180. This is why this deck does so well. There's damage coming from everywhere. Your Druddigon's dealing damage, your Greninja's dealing damage, and your Gyarados, once it goes online, just destroys anything. We have 2 Professor Researchers, 2 Misties, 1 Leaf, 2 Pokeballs, and 2 Potions. And there you guys have it. That is the top 8 meta decks that are currently winning in tournaments across Limitless TCG. Now, if you like these types of videos, don't forget to hit the like button and consider subscribing for more quality meta-defining Pokemon Pocket content. Or if you want to look at any of these deck lists in action, me piloting them and giving my tips and tricks while going turn for turn, well then check out any of the videos on the channel. But with that, let me know in the comments what you think of this top 8 deck list. Which decks do you think are going to emerge and maybe even kick out some of these old decks at a top 8 and take their spot? Personally, I don't think Celebi EX, Serperior, and Golem Druddigon are too safe. I think a couple more weeks and we might see those 2 get kicked out and something new, maybe Aerodactyl Machamp. I keep saying it, people keep disagreeing with me because no one plays it, but listen, all it takes is 1, right? And then we started a wave and everyone else will start playing it, but we'll see. Anyway, guys, let me know in the comments what you think. Again, don't forget to like, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.